to the tune of some millions of dollars.
Yeah, you know, I read the book that this is based on, Clinton Cash, read it, and I actually interviewed the author on Sunday. This is a tough one. As you know, the Clinton campaign says you haven't produced a shred of evidence that there was any official action as secretary that supported the interests of donors. You didn't disclose in your book that he had sold the interest. Beyond that, there's no evidence at all that Hillary Clinton got directly involved in this decision. We've done investigative work here at ABC News, found no proof of any kind of direct action. He said there's no smoking gun, no evidence that she changed the policy based on donations to the foundation. No smoking gun. The Democrats have said this is indication of your partisan interest. They say you used to work for President Bush as a speechwriter. You're funded by the Koch brothers. How do you respond to that? Because when you actually look closely at it, he even says there's no evidence of any direct action taken on behalf of the donors. Donna, I got to talk to you first. I know you're close to the Clinton team. They did not want to put anybody out to talk about this book today.
Hillary Clinton has this whole scandal now about some form. Are you familiar with the Clintons? Hillary Clinton.
Now I want to address some news you may have seen about me. Over the last several years, I've made substantial donations to dozens of charities, including the Clinton Global Foundation. Those donations were a matter of public record, but I should have made additional disclosures on air when we covered the foundation. And I now believe that directing personal donations to that foundation was a mistake. Even though I made them strictly to support work done to stop the spread of AIDS, help children, and protect the environment in poor countries, I should have gone the extra mile to avoid even the appearance of a conflict. I apologize to all of you for failing to do that.
Poor dead Americans.
Censor video.
What difference does it make?
Censor video.
You know, this is a joke because he didn't disclose the fact that he was the press agent for Bill Clinton during Bill Clinton's administration. And it's just amazing to me that he can get away with this level of deception. That was George Stephanopoulos in a montage of what happened over the past week or so. Since this book by Peter Schweitzer came out called Clinton Cash, you know, it looks like this woman who's running for president of the United States is not going to be vetted anywhere in the media, at least not the mainstream media. In addition, it appears, now I don't have any proof, but it certainly appears through all of the scandals happening that Hillary Judas Clinton has sold the United States out for about 30 pieces of silver or the equivalent today. Hello, you're listening to The Resistance. This is Forrest Wilson. But you've got an ABC anchor defending a politician, Hillary Clinton, from scrutiny. And he's deceiving the public and not disclosing his close association with the Clintons, even giving money to the Clinton Foundation, which he finally fessed up to, $75,000. But apparently it was for the children, climate change in other countries, and for AIDS prevention. Look, I'm not concerned about George Stephanopoulos, or for that matter, ABC. I don't watch George, and I don't watch ABC. It's the people who watch this deception that I'm concerned about, because they're going to go out and vote November 2016. But the good news is there just aren't enough liberals to overthrow this country. About 17%, 17 to 20% in this country identify themselves as liberals. And I bet you half of them don't even understand what it means to be a liberal, or a progressive for that matter. But liberals control the media, institutions of higher learning, some of the technical sphere. I mean, explain for me MSNBC. MSNBC, the home of Rachel Maddow. So the media is failing at their responsibility to investigate and report or vet political candidates. Not all media. The mainstream media. In particular, investigate and report on politicians and the government. The result? Long-term taxpayer abuse, unsustainable growth of government, a recession of liberty, and a reduction in the power and freedom of the individual. Look, I can remember a time when people did not openly admit they were socialist, much less communist. I do remember a time when many would not admit to being gay. But now, less than 1% of the population openly admits it, and admits it in the strangest of forums. I don't have to admit to you what my sexuality is. It's really nobody's business, nor do I want to make it. So it's bizarre to me that someone would come out and say, oh, I'm gay, or I'm lesbian, or I'm socialist, or I'm communist. It just doesn't seem, well, it just seems bizarre to me. Anyways, you've got all these people running around. Bernie Sanders has announced he's going to run for president several weeks ago. He is an admitted socialist. He is an independent from Vermont, independent party. Mr. Sanders needs to change his party to the dependent party because that's what socialism encourages. And my response to people who say, well, maybe we ought to try socialism. Where has it worked? Name me one place where it's worked. Oh, I don't know. Adolf Hitler's Germany. Did it work there? Not for millions of Jews. And yet Jews continue to support the Democrat Party. It boggles the mind. Here you've got a party that's actively replacing the constituents. Not all Jews and blacks support Democrats, but a preponderance. And here they are actively bringing in people from south of the border to replace their constituents and to ensure Democrat majorities way into the future. We also have some Republicans guilty of that. Think about this. It's an act of love. No, Jeb Bush, it's a felonious act. It is not an act of love to cross our border and violate our laws. I'm sick and tired of politicians putting people from other countries above citizens. And how much more are black people and Jews going to take of this before they leave the Democrat Party? I was reading about the founder of the Democrat Party and his campaign to exterminate escaped black slaves and American indigenous people, otherwise known as Indians, some time ago under President Monroe. And it was Andrew Jackson, the founder of the Democrat Party. And I thought, well, that makes sense. This man was hell-bent on exterminating blacks and indigenous people. And for all practical purposes, he accomplished the goal, the founder of the Democrat Party. Anyways, we are in a campaign of Hillary Clinton, and I want to talk to you today about really the three scandals that have broke here recently about this woman. The campaign cash, the secret server, the server that she used to conduct the people's business as head of the State Department. And finally, the Benghazi investigation that needs to be dusted off and really revisited because, according to all accounts, it appears that the United States government has switched sides in the war on terror. And that would explain a lot. I want to play clip 2, if you will, Jack. This is Claire Lopez, and she's speaking at the Citizens Commission on Benghazi that was invited by the National Press Club to discuss these matters. This was April 22nd, 2014, I believe. Play
10
Claire
years
Lopez.
After 9/11, the attacks of 9/11, the United States switched sides in the war on terrorism, and nobody, including the media, has really talked about that point. We have switched sides in the war on terror with what we did in Libya, knowingly providing, I should say, facilitating the provision of weapons to known al-Qaeda militias and figures. That is what I want to leave you with and challenge you with to follow up on. Thank you very much.
Switch sides in the war on terror. And look, they've had some help, these Democrats and this Democrat administration. They've had some help from people like John McCain. I mean, how many times have you heard John McCain stand up and say, well, we need to arm the opposition? And we really don't even know who the opposition is. And many, at least the American public don't. Many in the intel community, like Claire Lopez, former CIA operations officer, know who these people are and are willing to expose the United States government's desire to arm people like the Muslim Brotherhood and other al-Qaeda affiliates. Anyways, earlier I was talking about socialists and communists, and look, I can live with gay people. I don't have a problem with gay people. I've had some very close associations that were gay, very dear friends, and I do to this day. But communists and socialists, I do not, nor can I live with communists and socialists. But that's how things have changed. You know, I can remember when commercial flying was a big deal. Jack, do you remember that? You know, you get on an airplane, it was a big deal, you wore a suit, whatever. I also remember you could smoke on a plane, you had leg room, and stewardesses were really female and had standards. You know, weight, height, and beauty standards. I mean, do you remember those days, Jack? Jack, are you there? You're just nodding your head. But now flying means you get frisked, seen naked, and subjected to the ire of flight attendants. They don't even call them stewardesses anymore. And let me tell you, I made a big mistake one time. I used to travel, a lot of international flights, mostly international. But after the switch, after the removal of the standards, I asked this big burly flight attendant, I said, mistakenly, I said, waitress, she spins around and she says, I'm not a waitress. I'm a flight attendant here for the safety of the passengers and crew. Let me tell you, the plane got really quiet, and I mean really quiet. And without thinking, I said to her, do you think I could have a Diet Coke? Anyways, airlines are a perfect example of what you get when you reduce the standards. Detroit is a perfect example of what you get when you reduce the standards. Public education, today's public education is a perfect example of what you get when you reduce the standards. We'll be right back. I want you to stay tuned. This show has really made an impact, and I'm going to tell you how, not me personally, but someone associated with the show, in this investigation of Hillary Clinton and Benghazi. You're listening to The Resistance. Forrest Wilson, AM 600, WBOB, The Answer. We'll be right back.
Let's return to We the People with Forrest Wilson. Once again, here's Forrest.
So the show's been on for about a year. May 10th was the anniversary of WeThePeople1787.org and what I like to call The Resistance. And the show's really put together by a group of patriots that not only fund the show, but also help produce the show. And if you go to our website, you can see some of our past shows. Our first show was with Phyllis Schlafly. I interviewed her on May the 10th, 2014. And she is a national leader of the conservative movement since the publication of her best-selling book, A Choice, Not an Echo, in 1964. Phyllis Schlafly. You can go listen to that interview. I was nervous as hell and couldn't believe that I was doing what I was doing, nor having the opportunity to do that interview. Because, you know, look, I'm not a radio host. Well, I guess I am now. I mean, it's been a year every Saturday for 1 hour. But this is not something that I ever intended to do. My background was in engineering, so, you know, I'm not exactly a people person. I'm not exactly someone who gets in front of people and does public speaking, and it's very difficult to do that for me, except when I think about what my father gave up for his country and what so many others have given up for this country and what I'm going to leave to my children. And I'm not going to leave a country in the shape that it's in right now. So this is about all I can do, is come on the air 1 hour a week and speak directly to the people about the things that are happening today. Anyways, so many people are truly involved in this show besides yours truly. And one of them is a colleague of mine, and his name is Wesley Bunce. And he is the representative for National Right, You're Congressman, a very important grassroots organization. And I want to bring Wes in because he's got an interesting story to tell of how this organization has made an impact to thwart the desires of Hillary Clinton to become the first female president of the United States. Wes Bunce, welcome to The Resistance, my brother.
Thank you, Forrest. Good to be with you.
You know, I really didn't understand the impact that we'd made, even though we've had Rear Admiral Chuck Kubic on this show several times. I really didn't have an idea of the impact that our organization has made in this Benghazi investigation and the attempt to thwart Hillary Clinton and her desires to become president. Now, that's not a goal of the that's our goal. That's not a goal of the Benghazi Commission, the Citizens Commission on Benghazi. They really are trying to get to the truth of the matter, but just give us a basic outline of how this thing transpired and your role in getting Chuck Kubic, literally an eyewitness to the switching of sides of the American government in support of an Al-Qaeda affiliated group in Libya. What was the chain of events that led to Trey Gowdy?
Well, I've been listening with great interest to this dialogue from the media point of view about this. What difference does it make anyway? It's over. 4 Americans are dead. Well, how it started for me is I get a phone call from one of the members of the National Right, Your Congressman, who says, "Have you met Admiral Chuck Kubic?" I said, "I don't know who he is." "Well, didn't you tell me that your son served in the Iraq War?" "Yes, they did." He said, "Well, he commanded the invasion of this invasion in 2003 and retired 3 years later and began a private engineering company in Libya as an opportunity to build roads and bridges in the civilian sector. And opening a company in that country, in Libya, necessitated a contact with the embassy. And at that time, of course, that's Chris Stevens, the ambassador for the United States. So I invited Admiral Kubic when he was in Jacksonville to have dinner with a large number of business owners and members of the Right Your Congressman group, and they were so impressed with his story about what had been taking place over there that they said, "Why can't we get a more regular commentary and discussion and evidence of what it doesn't seem like the media is covering?" And I said, "That's a great idea. Let's invite him." And so we went ahead and we invited him to Jacksonville and had a large dinner showing. And he spoke about not only the story of Benghazi, but also the story of Gaddafi, the leader of the country previously, and that he had a personal role in it. And so became, as of course I'm a Navy veteran, very interested in his career, and it just seemed to continue into the area of American interest, even with his business. So at the dinner, he explained clearly how this event, where he was there in Benghazi, actually he was in Tripoli the day of the event, but had dinner with the ambassador a short time before that, and discussing, the changing terrorist environment over there, and with the Muslim Brotherhood, and he had a particular inside knowledge of that. And so at the end of that show, or that dinner, we invited the businesses to sponsor a radio show so we could have a dialogue on a continuing basis with not only him, but other significant Americans that maybe don't get the ear and the image from the national media. So the investigations began, the commentary began, and he let me know that there was another organization, the Citizens Commission, as Forrest has mentioned, on Benghazi. It was headed by Admiral Ace Lyons up in the Pentagon, and that there's a key place where some private investigations taking place, educate the public. And I said, well, I'd heard through my work that Michelle Bachmann had made multiple comments from the Intelligence Committee about Benghazi and how it was a bigger story than the media was portraying. And so I coordinated a meeting between the two admirals, and Michelle Bachmann in D.C., and after that meeting, a press conference was called at the National Press Club by Admiral Lyons, and we, as you who have been frequent listeners, have been hearing that we actually posted on our website at wethepeople1787.org the actual 1-hour press conference with two admirals, two CIA officers, and you've already heard Claire Lopez make some statements. She was there. And when that interview was over, it drew some national attention. Glenn Beck contacts the Admiral and says, would you like to come to Houston? And we have a program called The Blaze. We'd like to put it out there for the public to meet you and hear your story. I don't know who you are. And then that was followed by an inquiry by Fox News. The next thing that happens after that is the Admiral gets an invitation to come to the Capitol and meet with John Boehner, who is, of course, the Speaker of the House. And right after that, the Speaker makes an announcement that a select committee is going to be appointed on the whole story of Benghazi with Trey Gowdy, Congressman from South Carolina.
That's an amazing story, Wes. I want to hold you over through the break here, and let's continue it after the break. But you were instrumental in getting this together, and I just, it's truly an amazing organization that you and I are affiliated with, my friend. Truly amazing. We will be right back. You're listening to The Resistance, Forrest Wilson, AM 600, WBOB. If you want to call in, 904-222-TALK, 222-8255. We'll be right back.
Let's return to We the People with Forrest Wilson. Once again, here's Forrest.
On April 22nd, 2014, Accuracy in Media's Citizens Commission on Benghazi held a media roundtable to discuss the revelations of their interim report. The report found that Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi had offered to abdicate, but that the U.S. government chose not to take advantage of the truce talks. The CCB also found that the U.S. government had helped facilitate the provision of weapons to al-Qaeda-affiliated Libyan rebels. We're talking to Wes Bunce. Wes is a colleague of mine in this experiment known as WeThePeople1787.org. And Wes, forgive me, for the longest time, you had, I'm sure, you're working behind the scenes. All this is going on. I've got my life. You've got yours. But I had no idea of the impact of this show and what you in particular were able to do to help pull Rear Admiral Charles Kubic into the mix of the Citizens Commission on Benghazi. But I want you to finish the story, because we got a few more minutes, and then I've got Rear Admiral Charles Kubic coming on, who's going to give us an update on the Citizens Commission on Benghazi and basically set the table for anybody who doesn't know, what went on. It's more, certainly the killing of an ambassador is significant. Ambassador Stevens and 3 patriotic Americans were killed on 9/11/2012. But really, there's a lot more to this story than just that. But go ahead, Wes. I want you to finish how this all came together and how Trey Gowdy was brought into the picture as a result of you making the introduction of Rear Admiral Charles Kubic.
Well, thank you again, Forrest. It's a convoluted trail, but it follows the story of truth, people that have evidence of their personal cognizance of what happened. And it started, of course, when the Admiral arrived in Libya and beginning his construction company, he was invited to be a liaison to help negotiate the Gaddafi transfer of power and to ensure that the terrorist element, the Muslim Brotherhood, did not influence the transition. So he was working with high-level American government officials, and that's how he met Chris Stevens. And, of course, they built a friendship over the couple years. And it was a significant connection because he was outside the official loop and was trying to just aid and abet a common interest, which was we want to have peace. They are a potential good ally of ours, and all of a sudden it falls apart, and the Americans and NATO move against Gaddafi, and it sets up a whole new attitude and atmosphere in that region for terrorism. And Chuck, being a patriot, our Admiral Kubic, he wanted to find any way he could, and just through a series of coincidences came in touch with me and my group, and I have a 45-year career of working directly with the United States Congress and knowing how important as the people's voice that we have a chance to influence our government. So I met you this way, Forrest, many years ago, and I met the Admiral this way, and I met a lot of other significant people. As a matter of fact, I actually ran a campaign for Congress myself in 1992 against the incumbent Charles Bennett, 44-year congressman from Jacksonville, Florida. So I've been in and around the circles of trying to provide influence and access to good Americans that otherwise, don't have political savvy. They just working their jobs and taking care of their families, and yet feeling distended, not connected to what's really happening. The media just seems to be on the other side of so many issues. So as an alternative to the media, there's a communication link established between the elected official and their constituent, and that's what I do on a daily basis, is I try and bring those parties together. And that's how we landed on Admiral Kubic. Of course, I put him into the network, and that led to, of course, the contact with the Admiral in the Pentagon, that led to Michelle Bachmann on the Intelligence Committee, and led to the press conference. The press conference leads to other media outlets like Glenn Beck and Fox News, all trying to start getting involved in this story. So it is now matured. Gowdy has been appointed. It's been 1 year in process, and right now we're facing a major Hillary Clinton deposition and interview before this committee. And recently the committee, under Gowdy's leadership, made statements to Fox News. I think you're aware of that, and we've posted that on our website as well, saying that this investigation is going to take this year and possibly into next year to conclude and find out where does the trail lead for liability or culpability. Who's responsible for this failure in communication and protecting key assets in the American embassy and also the nation of Libya. So that was my role, just to kind of bring people together and get the story and not let it be trapped by the major media as just a political, hysterical event like Congressman Cummins would have us to believe. This is nothing more than a political witch hunt. McCarthyism has come back alive, and in reality, it's a story that needs to be discovered, and it needs to be finished. We need to have a closure to the death of Americans and what's happening to our foreign policy.
Wes Bunce, I want to thank you for your service, and thank you for the opportunity to do this radio show. And thank you for all the work that you do with WeThePeople1787.org. Wes, I will be talking to you soon, my friend.
God bless. Thank you very much.
And I want to get right on to Rear Admiral Charles Kubic, and I'm going to have him set the table again and go through kind of the update on where this is at and why this is important to you and the 2016 election. Let me bring in now Rear Admiral Charles Kubic. Welcome back to the Resistance, sir. How are you?
Hello, Forrest. It's good to be back with you.
You were really instrumental in getting this thing going in terms of Trey Gowdy, the Select Committee, and all of the things that have happened up to this point. We have the first roundtable with the Citizens Commission on Benghazi that was sponsored by the National Press Club, which you spoke at up on our website, WeThePeople1787.org. I encourage the listeners to go view that. But I want you to lay the table on how this thing transpired with Muammar Gaddafi and, very briefly bring us up to the point where Benghazi happened on 9/11/2012.
I'd be happy to do that, Forrest. But starting with where we are now, one of the things that we know now is that all of the prior investigations that were done, including the State Department's own investigation, were incomplete. They didn't consider all the documents, and they didn't consider all of the witnesses and people who had direct knowledge. And we now know that the full burden of finding the whole truth really rests on the Select Committee. So their work is very, very important. And the work is not just looking at the instant attacks there in Benghazi, as you mentioned. I mean, we all know, some basic facts about Benghazi. We know that 3 American facilities were attacked over an 8-hour period. We know that there were repeated calls for increased security before the attacks and help during the attacks. We know that there were 4 deaths, including our ambassador, and we know that the true story was covered up with a false narrative about a video. But as we look at this and we go back to the kind of the beginning of our involvement in Libya, we don't know a lot. We don't know, for example, why we bombed Libya in the first place. We don't know why, after bombing them, we didn't stick around and help them unify their militia into a trained national security force. We don't know who made the decisions during all of this. We certainly don't know why they felt the need to cover up what actually happened, and we don't know who is accountable.
Well, they've gone to a great deal of trouble to cover this thing up. And apparently Trey Gowdy now, from the private email server to the whole story about a video that made some people angry there in Benghazi, to the events that really precipitated the fall of Libya into a failed state. Claire Lopez claimed that the United States switched sides in the war on terror.
Well, and again, with all that we know about it, you would think that there would be absolute outrage in the halls of government, but there isn't. And in fact, I believe the bigger picture of what we're seeing here over the last 4 years is an absolute breakdown of the role of government, respect for authority, and government's responsibility to be honest with the American people. And because of this, and because of the political bickering that this devolves into on both sides, Trey Gowdy and his committee has established a very disciplined process. And their process includes receipt, and then review of all available documents, including emails, taking sworn depositions from those who have direct knowledge, and then finding out all the facts. And once he has the facts, then connecting the dots for the American people and laying out the whole story. The problem is right now, what we're seeing is an utter disregard for the authority of the Congress, with subpoenas being ignored by the State Department, by Hillary Clinton herself, and cover-ups ruling the day. And when they do talk, it's nothing but spin. And so I think Congressman Gowdy and those who are working with him have kind of held to their process, and they've said, even if it's going to take a while, we need all the documents, because we don't want to see part of the story, and we want to know why documents are being withheld. What do they say? What is behind this? Why did we bomb Libya in the first place? Why did we not provide protection, and why did we try to cover it up after we had this terrible attack?
Well, Rear Admiral Charles Kubic, I've got to take a quick break, and I want to continue this conversation, and I want to get your reaction to Claire Lopez's admission there during the National Press Club hosting of the Benghazi, the Citizens Commission on Benghazi, the CCB. We'll be right back. You're listening to The Resistance, AM 600, FM 100.3. Forrest Wilson. I'll be right back.
Let's return to We the People with Forrest Wilson. Once again, here's Forrest.
10 years after 9/11, the attacks of 9/11, the United States switched sides in the war on terrorism, and nobody, including the media, has really talked about that point. We have switched sides in the war on terror with what we did in Libya, knowingly providing, facilitating the provision of weapons to known al-Qaeda militias and figures. That is what I want to leave you with and challenge you with to follow up on. Thank you very much.
That's Claire Lopez, former CIA operations employee. Rear Admiral Kubic, that's pretty damning.
Well, it is, and it's a statement that Claire made is based on a lot of research and information that had been provided by sources very close to the the actions that were taken, and it may very well be because of the actions taken to knowingly arm terrorists, and to do it for whatever reason is at the basis of this cover-up. Because once you start to look into this and you see that there was an offer on the table at the beginning of the Libyan revolution for Gaddafi to abdicate, as long as Libya was left in a position where it could defend itself against the Al-Qaeda terrorists that Gaddafi knew, were trying to disrupt his government. We know that information was provided and available to the senior decision makers in our country, and we know that the offer to have a truce to discuss a ceasefire was rejected, and we know that a decision directive was signed by the president, which authorized the provision of weapons, knowing that those weapons would fall into the hands of Al-Qaeda terrorists. And again, when you start to look at that, and we know that Chris Stevens was involved as the Secretary of State's emissary at that point in time into facilitating this transfer. And, we suspect, although this is some of the things that need to be proved, that his presence in Libya and in Benghazi on that fateful day was somewhat still related to the issues associated with arming people and those arms falling into the wrong hands.
Well, and the result of all this is we've got a failed state in Libya. ISIS has now moved in. We apparently aren't going to do anything about it. And the investigation, as far as I'm concerned, has really been, at least from the media standpoint, been put on the back burner. You don't hear anything about Benghazi. In fact, you don't hear anything about the server, the secret server. I think that server possibly holds some of the information that would be of interest to Trey Gowdy and the Select Committee.
Well, I think so as well, and I think they've stated as much. But when you look at the work that not only that Trey Gowdy is doing, but that his Vice Chairman Jim Jordan of Ohio and Mike Pompeo of Kansas, they've interviewed an awful lot of people, taken their sworn depositions. They've done that privately. They have looked at thousands of documents, many of them new documents, which have been received, and they are building, their fact base. However, they can't get the critical emails from the State Department, which is continuing to stonewall. And in fact, it's not just their requests from a number of other investigative sources under the Freedom of Information Act, all of which are being stonewalled. In fact, I was talking to someone the other day who said the State Department says, well, they'll get around to answering a request that was put in over a year ago, sometime in March of 2016. So they're stonewalling it, and at some point in time, I think after doing as much as they possibly can, the committee will have to go forward and begin to conduct their hearings, but their open hearings are going to be based on facts that they've already collected. It's not going to be just a wide-open political discussion. It's going to be a fact-based presentation and investigation, I believe.
Where do you think this ends?
I still believe, and I know that there are people who want to come forward and tell more of the story. I know some of them have come through, privately, but I still believe that once people get to the point where they are no longer fearful, people who are currently in government positions, in military positions, and they are able to tell their story, I think the American people are going to see what really happened. They're going to be very disappointed in their senior leadership, and they will find a way to hold them accountable. And if that doesn't happen, if this just does blow over, then I'm sorry. I think that our republic is doomed. If we can't somehow have a Congress that can exercise its investigative powers, an executive branch which will comply, and a judicial system which will enforce, such action. Right now, we know the judicial system is absent because the Department of Justice and even the FBI have been so politicized at the top levels that there is no investigation going on there, such as we might have seen decades ago with Watergate or Iran-Contra.
Rear Admiral Charles Kubic, I want to thank you for your time today. Appreciate the insights, and we'll look forward to having you back. Hopefully we'll get to the bottom of this whole Benghazi mess and the events leading up to it.
Well, Forrest, it's very important that you and your listeners support the committee's fact-based approach, no matter how long it takes, because eventually the truth will come out. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time today. Well, there you have it. So we've got Hillary Judas Clinton with 3 scandals going on. Okay, thank you. Thank you. We've got her with 3 scandals going on, and we still don't have any answers on Benghazi. Now, if you go to our website, wethepeople1787.org, wethepeople1787.org, you can see this National Press Club briefing with Rear Admiral Charles Kubic, Claire Lopez, and Admiral Lyons, their presentation in April of 2014. I encourage you to go to the website and check it out. If your health care plan's been canceled or your employer's dropped your plan due to the expense, listen, I've got a biblical alternative. It's called MediShare, and it's administered by Christians, not bureaucrats. MediShare is a program of Christian care ministry, and it's a health care sharing program whose members share financial resources to pay each other's medical expenses. MediShare isn't insurance. Resources are shared directly between members, but it does exempt you from the Obamacare tax, and you are in full compliance with MediShare. Members of this health care sharing ministries like MediShare comply with the Affordable Care Act. So you don't have to worry about that. And you don't have to purchase health insurance or pay a penalty. Since 1993, MediShare members have shared more than $682 million in medical expenses. And because of its large network of providers, members have shared or saved an additional $295 million in medical costs. I'm a member, and I encourage you to give it a try. MyChristianCare.org is a website, MyChristianCare.org. If you want to call them, it's 800-772-5623. This is part of my personal resistance to the administration and their desire to take over healthcare. MediShare. Check it out. Well, that's all the time we have today. You've listened to The Resistance, AM 600, FM 100.3. I hope to see you next week. Have a great one.